Hello and welcome to a new episode of Story of Success in which we interview prominent Egyptian figures. We'll be back after the break, so stay with us. Our guest today is a successful scientist. As I mentioned in the previous episode, he was born in Upper Egypt, the south of Egypt, and he excelled in science, especially electricity and renewable energy. I'm happy to have with me today Dr. Ayman Nafady, and we're continuing our interview with him. Well, in the previous episode, we learned how he was born in Upper Egypt, how he really worked hard to enter the Faculty of Chemistry. He became a teacher there, then he won several scholarships, one to the United States and the other to Australia. We talked about some of his breakthroughs and scientific researches, and now continuing my interview with him. Welcome back, Doctor.
Hi again. Yeah.
Well, the last thing we ended our episode with was talking about some of the scientific research you did in the United States, as well as some of the things you learned from your professors over there, like time management and scientific thinking. Now, I'd like to ask you, we've been discussing the United States and Australia, but what happened in between? Like, have you returned back to Egypt?
Yes, actually, after I finished my PhD, that was back in 2004, I returned back to Egypt for 1.5 years in Sohag University as a lecturer of chemistry there. And then I applied for that position at Monash University in Australia. So during that time, I taught many courses of chemistry to undergrad student, and I actually one master student in Sohag. So then, you know, the environment for doing research in Egypt, it's still, you know, not as good compared to US at that time. So I had struggled a bit to, you know, start to initiate doing some kind of work. And that was actually a driving force for me to find a way that way I can keep doing the good work that I started in my PhD. And the opportunity came as working in Australia at that time. So I had a chance to actually interact with many students in Egypt. Even I tried to change the way we teach chemistry to our undergrad and graduate students. That had actually my favorite way is trying to find not a routine way. It has to be a motivative to the students, and I always like to have an approach where I become very close to my students, not only in chemistry side or on science side, but also in personal problems. If they have any questions or any problems, I always very close to them, trying to help them to even think of life. And I call this as a chemistry of life, how we can develop that into our daily life.
you have researched and published more than 70 researches. Out of these many researches, which is the one that you're really proud of?
Well, the one actually there is a few that I really they shaped my career in chemistry, but one of those was a core and was a point where it started to open up a new field of chemistry, and that was in my PhD in US. And my supervisor, Professor Bill Geiger, at that time, started to develop this back to the question that you asked about those weakly coordinating anion polarity media. So normally, if you have a catalyst, like if you have a compound, when you add an electron to it or remove an electron out of that molecule, normally it tends to decompose because you're giving it energy more than what makes it stable. So he developed a new kind of, they called it electrolytes. And this is a charge carrier. So normally if we would make it simple for people to understand, so those supporting electrolyte, it's like salts. We can say it's like boats. And they can carry molecules and, travel with them into the solution. So these kind of supporting electrolytes, we call them even magic electrolytes, because they have unusual type of properties, chemistry, and I was actually part of the team, but my part on that research group was to see how can we use this anion to stabilize, which means we make this anion to be long-lived in solution, so we can characterize what's going on after removing or adding an electron. And this is called redox reaction. So we normally know the terminology, oxidation, reduction, reaction, but this is based on adding an electron to a molecule or removing an electron out of the molecule, and then the new daughters that you generate, we call radical. We want to see if this is similar to their parents or different. Lecture, we can take some characterization where it tells us where we stand. So the funny situation here, and back to the cobalt, I actually discovered for one of the cobalt systems a mechanism for an oxidation that wasn't actually known before. And when I start to propose that mechanism to my supervisor, he said to me, well, Ayman, I've been in this field for 30 years, but I never came across such a plausible kind of mechanism. So if you want me to convince with that, you have to find supportive evidence for this. And then we started to find, piece of works, doing some kind of measurements, and every time we find that our results is actually establishing and proving that my proposal for the mechanism was correct. And he kind of convinced, but in order for that kind of discovery to be published, especially in one of the top journals in the world, we have also to find some other evidence, not from our group, but from external source. So he sent our results to another group in Portugal, where they do what they call it, theoretical calculations, density functional calculations. And based on this, they can come up with an approach to say that our results is true or wrong. And actually, after they spend more than 1 year doing these calculations, and then they came back to us and they said, your prediction, your mechanism is correct, and here is another evidence to confirm what you concluded and what you discovered. Then we actually published in Journal of the American Chemical Society, they call JACS, and JACS in the chemistry is one of the most prestigious journals in that field.
Yeah. Doctor, now for Egypt, how would you describe the electrochemistry study in Egypt? Are we really benefiting from it or not?
Actually, the field of electrochemistry in Egypt is very strong. And I did my master degree based on the expertise of my professors, and his name is Rifat Abdul Hamid. He is the first one to taught me how to do a chemistry experiment and how to think about what's going on with the mechanism. And actually, among the Faculty of Sciences here in Egypt, there is always many professors who are very pioneer and strong background in chemistry. Um, the crucial event here, and the main point that I want to say, that most of our research is not for even developing science or making something that we can use as an application. So once we have this kind of attitude changed, where we do research not to get promoted, become a professor, but we do research because we need to advance science or to link problems in the industry or environment and try to solve that problems with electrochemistry or any kind of research, then definitely that will improve and advance the education system in Egypt.
Now, doctor, is it easy for a young scientist to travel abroad and get the foreign expertise, or is it hard?
I would say it depends on every individual and his capability, but the experiment, and from my experience, Egyptians are very successful once they have the opportunity. Many of us, very hard to find someone who got the opportunity and could not fulfill the requirement or fail to achieve a good progress. However, personal motivation is an important issue, and how you like the field of research that you've been doing. Also, it is very important to set for as a reference, as a standard to become a pioneer in your area of expertise. So some people, they think once I get a PhD, that's all I need. Others, they want to have an impact and significant impact on the community, and trying to have their name built, reputation into different fields.
Yes. Now, doctor, when did you travel to Saudi Arabia? Because currently you're teaching in Saudi Arabia, aren't you?
Yes. Again, this kind of steps, it came by luck. So I was in Cairo University. They had a conference, and I had a lecture there. I finished the lecture, and everyone started to ask questions. And after we finished the session, the vice dean for King Saud University came to me. His name is Professor Khalid Al-Farhan, and he said to me, the way you present your work and the type of chemistry you're doing, we're really in need for it. We're looking for people with motivation, and I can offer you a job right now. And actually, I was coming from Australia to present Monash University in that conference. So that was a bit of a surprise to me, because I said to him, well, I'm not thinking of going to Saudi because I know that the environment for doing research is not that good. He said to me, well, King Saud is a different story, because we're putting a lot of fund and we're establishing so many research programs, and we very much same as any international highly reputation university. And when I start to talk to him, I convinced by the fact that yes, he's true. And I didn't accept the offer right away, but after a couple years we became kind of like friends, and from time to time we send emails and greetings in Eids and things like that. So one time he sent me an email and he said, Ayman, it's time for you now to come to join us. Why? Because we're establishing a center called Sustainable Energy Technology, and we want you to come and lead that group of energy group there. So then he started to explain to me more about the nature of the work, and you still can have more freedom to go here and there. And the interesting thing that I said to him, okay, but at the same moment, I had an offer from University of North Carolina, and that was my dream actually, to get back to US. sometimes, you blame things and,
It
they're
works out the other way.
exactly, exactly. So that's what happened. I applied for both jobs, like the one in US and the one in KSU. The KSU came first, so I said, why don't I go and see how things going while I'm waiting for the other paperwork of US to finish. So I went to Riyadh and I spent 1.5 months there. I like the university, everything is fine, but the environment wasn't, as good as I expect. So I came back with the intention that probably I should focus in US and going back to US. I went to the American Embassy in Melbourne and I did the interview. Everything was perfect. And then I called my supervisor in US and I said to him, well, I booked already the ticket and I sent him the dates and 100% sure, and actually it was non-refundable ticket and one way.
Wow. So what happened?
So um, I give him the dates based on what they told me at the embassy, that it may take 2 weeks to get your passport back. And I wait until only 2 days left before the traveling date, and there is no passport, no visa. So I called back to him and I sent him email saying that we have to delay this because of the visa problems. And he said, that's fine. We could wait until you get the visa and paperwork processed. So while I'm waiting, the doctor from the Saudi called me. And he said to me, I said to him, well, I made my mind and I want to go to US. He said, Ayman, well, the chance in KSU is much, much more. It's better than
United
in
States.
United States. And his was my family. They said maybe we need to change and go to Saudi and see the culture there. So everyone is just pushing me to go to Saudi. So I had to ask my supervisors and friends in Australia, is it a good step to move forward and leave US and go to Saudi? And they said yes, it's time for you to have your own research group, to establish your own career rather than just working again for another professor.
So in Saudi Arabia, actually, it's your own personal team.
Yes. So in there actually we have so many subgroups, but my group there is focused on the inorganic chemistry again. Now we develop new materials that we can use for water splitting, and this is where the concept of renewable energy start to appear,
No, but for Saudi Arabia, is water abundant there? Like I would have imagined solar energy or wind, but is there a lot of water there?
That's a very good question, actually. I think the center that they established for renewable energy, it has solar energy as one part and hydrogen energy as another part. And even they can use different types of like nuclear energy and so on. But the fact that water resources there is very rare. We use much water to generate hydrogen. You know what I mean? It is a technology that we need to develop. where we can replace petroleum by a clean and renewable source of a fuel, like we use hydrogen instead of petrol at that time. So that's why the part of research was focusing on solar energy, and the other was in hydrogen energy. And I want to say, from research point of view, we're just trying to put our hands into the technology, regardless of how the applicability of that, if it is going to be useful or suitable for the environment where we develop this, or we make it worldwide, you know what I mean? So develop an idea. If it's not going to be used in Saudi, maybe used in Egypt or some other universities or some other countries where they can take advantage of that.
Now, you must have faced many challenges throughout your career. So what was the most challenging issue?
Um, well, in Egypt, actually, it was getting the equipment, chemicals. Sometimes it took even months to get nitrogen tanks, and this is really one of the funniest situation happened to me. For example, if I'm working in electrochemistry, I'm using nitrogen cylinders. So it's similar to the one that we use for our cookers, but it has nitrogen. So once this one finished, I have to wait probably 3 to 6 months to refill that, because we have to take it to us and then get it back from the manufacturer and until it comes to us. So it's a bit of time. When I first arrived to US and I find the labs is fully equipped with so many, state-of-the-art equipment, and I found instead of probably 5, 6 tanks of nitrogen they set aside. So my supervisor, he asked me, just a curious question: what did you like about our lab? So my quick answer was the nitrogen tanks. So for him, he was surprised, I didn't say about those, equipment and very expensive ones. I'm just focusing on the nitrogen tank. So he asked me, so why this tanks is amazing to you? Well, I told him about the struggle of how we refill this, and to find these available and ready that you can use and handle it. It was a big surprise. The other struggles, I think in US, they make your life easier. Even sending samples to analysis, it's an overnight delivery. Everything you need, it's between your hands, Australia, same-wise, it's a bit of a delay in purchasing chemicals. But I would say research in general, if you can avoid bureaucracy, paperwork, customs, you're going to be good in doing good research.
Now, I'd like now to ask you about your role model. Who is your role model?
Actually, in that particular question, I would say it depends on the time. So every stage in my life, it has many people impacted on me. So starting from my childhood, I would say my mother actually played a key role in developing my skills, and with her prayers, she's just amazing how she changed my life. Like any Egyptian, his first dream is to become a medical doctor. So every one of us, if you're studying science, you want to be a medical doctor in high school. In my case, I couldn't get to medicine, and then I start to go into chemistry, but she's always saying to me, you're going to be a doctor there, you're going to be a doctor there. Until, you give us the confidence that yes, you can achieve, you're capable to do this, and it happens. Now when I think back, if I had the opportunity, I wouldn't be a successful probably medical doctor. Everyone Allah create with his own qualities, personalities, properties, I would say, that could allow him to be pioneer in of life.
Finally, I'd like to ask about your dream.
Well, my dream is, and actually I start to have this in Facebook, I want to make people love chemistry. Simple message, chemistry, people think of it in a different way. So I wanna see that people, when they like chemistry, they will interact, they will deal with each other, among couples, among friends, everyone else, with love, with a way of understanding. And once we get to that point, I think we can not only change, our way of thinking, but we can change the whole environment, we can change the whole society. So I'm making, things like chemistry of life and chemistry of love. And actually in Australia, I had a chance to talk about this to people, how we can make people understand the concept of chemistry in a way that is not including reactions and experiments. No, it is about our life and how we deal with each other in a chemical way.
Well, Doctor, I wish you all the best of luck, and I'd like to thank you for this interview. Dr. Ayman Nafady, Associate Professor of Electrochemistry and Renewable Energy, thank you very much for this interview.
Thank you very much for the invitation, and I was pleased to be here.
Thank you, Doctor.
Thanks.
Well, that was Dr. Ayman Nafady, Associate Professor of Electrochemistry and Renewable Energy, and we've learned from him more about his trip to the United States, as well as what he has benefited from such a trip. We've also about his researches, also his role model and his dreams. And by this we come to an end of this episode of Story of Success. Until we meet again next week with another successful Egyptian figure, it's good.